Hey everyone, welcome to the Turnkey 365 live panel event. Today I've got a great one for you. This is going to be really interesting. We're coming at this from a new perspective or a different perspective, and really it is what you really can expect from the ERP, from Dynamics 365, from several different perspectives. We know that ultimately what's driving you to an ERP project, among a lot of the small details, at a high level, you're really looking for reduced risk, you're looking for return on investment and time to value, and you're looking at for innovation. And some of you are looking at automation and who knows, even AI for some of the more advanced folks and big dreamers out there. And that's really, we're going to look at this at a top level today. And I've got three great guests from Turnkey and beyond today. I'm joined by Chris Gherardini, Javier Ramirez, and Ben Cole, and I'm going to give you gents an opportunity to introduce yourself. Chris, why don't you start?
Chris Gherardini, president and founder of Turnkey Technologies. So been doing ERP and CRM implementations for 30 something years. So I'm glad to be here.
Oh, so he's a newbie. Yeah, yeah. Javier, why don't you tell the folks who you are?
Hi, Javier Ramirez, Practice Director for the Finance and Operations Business Unit at Turnkey Technology. So it's a pleasure to be here with you guys today.
Thank you, Javier. And Big Ben, let everybody know
Yep.
who you are.
I guess I'm the external guest for today's meeting. Ben Cole with ERP Connect, started the company about 2.5 years ago. Our main focus is on process improvement and efficiency in D365 Business Central, and have been working with Business Central since its cloud release in 2017. So excited to be here and chat with you all today.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of new things up your sleeve that I'm looking forward to hearing about. And my name's Chuck Coxhead. I'm Director of Sales and Marketing for Turnkey Technologies. I'm your host for this evening and going to keep these fellows moving along and sharing good information. So let's roll right into it. Chris, I'm going to start with you. So you've been doing this for a long time, but things change over time. So right now, thinking about 2023, what are some of the hot functional areas where the SMB folks are, realistically looking for ROI and with out-of-the-box Dynamics 365 today?
So yeah, you think about feature functionality and things that just weren't there before. And it's about labor reduction. I think that in the end of the day, the organizations want less labor on their payroll. And so as you look at automation, and that's it. And whether it's in the Business Central itself, and one of the hot ones that I'm playing with right now is banking. And in the evolution of banking flows and integration, in, out, magnificent. I did one today. I was on a session where we generate a payment journal in Business Central and we send it to the bank. They print the checks and it sends everything back. And guess what? It's done. And so, that is hugely efficient. But banking, and what else about banking? How about money's in? Money's in, money's out. So that's a hot one. Again, in the older legacy ERPs, they're on premise. They just didn't have the APIs to handshake with, but the technology has taken it a long way. Actionable business intelligence is still one of these evolutions where, we used to get reports all the time, but we couldn't click on them and have it take me to do something or do something for me. So you can even click, take me there, click, it did something. So, you think about report, what's the action that comes off a report? So it's another example of automation. I keep going. I mean, what's the other one? The remote process automation. Everybody comes, oh, RPA, what does that mean? Well, a great example of that is back to money. How about cash application? You think about customers sending you checks and payments, and now I don't have a person posting that cash. Wow, got rid of Dorothy that I've had for 30 years on the payroll. So cost savings, high ROI, but those just are a few examples, and I don't want to steal everybody's thunder, but somebody else can mention AI. But I think integration and just connected systems and automated processes is really, I've seen, come into the forefront. And again, it's cutting costs substantially. So,
Well, I love that you mentioned, in the SMB realm, the fact that it's the people. That's, if there's anywhere where people is more precious resource, it's certainly in the small and medium business, and they don't all have such lofty goals. So just a little follow up here. So if you were going to name kind of a top 3 must-haves for an SMB, what do you think those must-haves would be, even if someone is, to get started?
when you say must-haves, you're talking about features or people?
Yeah, must-have features, right off the bat for any SMB.
Yeah, well, financial reporting is the biggest one, and to have that drill down to get to the granular details. And I think that as you look at self-serving, because a lot of people, they have paper reports, what's behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a perfect example
Mm-hmm.
is to have drill through capability on reporting and
Mm-hmm.
to put ownership in front of that. That's a big one right there, because that allows you to
Mm-hmm.
really serve up answers and make business decisions. So it still
Mm-hmm.
comes down to business intelligence being the biggest piece for
Mm-hmm.
me. So
Very cool. Very cool. Excellent. Thank you. Javier, we're going to go over to you for more of an enterprise perspective. So, what are some of the additional benefits that are more applicable for the larger enterprise customers using D365?
Yeah, definitely. I think as a lot of the people and customers that been involved in an ERP implementation, right? Enterprise deployments could be kind of large, right? Huge impact, definitely, but also huge effort, right? It's kind of a cumbersome process sometimes. So first thing is, um, after a company is stable and they have passed all the difficulties of the ERP implementation, right? What I would like to say is what it's available on the next step is just going through that. Make sure that we increase the return of investment by let's say having a better planning, right? A lot of companies, they're used to master planning, right? But master
Mm-hmm.
planning, it's a concept that usually gets into the minimum, maximums, forecast sometimes, and real
Mm-hmm.
demand. But going forward, right, the future is on uh, demand-driven material requirements,
Mm-hmm.
DDMRP, right? The
Mm-hmm.
ability to have kind of thresholds and the ability to have reorder points and the ability to actually reduce the impact of all these kind of supply chain changes that happened through the last 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see a
Mm-hmm.
lot of delivery times getting increased, right?
Mm-hmm.
Overseas materials a lot of times. I mean, every time it's real difficult to have all the materials that you need within your country. So you
For
are
sure.
purchasing and looking overseas, right? So how do you put all these things inside the blender of master planning? That's what demand-driven material helps you with, right? So once you implement, let's say, D365 finance and operation, what it's next for me as a company to try to increase my return of investment based on the materials point of view, I will say this DDMRP is one of the options, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we can enhance our master planning. Of course, we talk about all the time about reducing time of processing, right? So as Chris was stating, accounts payable automation out of the box in D365 F&O by using Microsoft components with OCR. With also it's a good and an important thing to evaluate when you go to ROI is how do I reduce my licensing on external systems, my effort on integrations a lot of time with external systems, and I use Microsoft technology, right? To help my business, right? So OCR services are out of the box right now with Microsoft. So accounts payable, it's out of the box with Microsoft. Azure Synapse Analytics for your reporting. So we know the first step a lot of times is let's make sure my process work. Let's make sure my data in is correct. But now let's expand and let's actually extend my functionality by using Azure Synapse. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I need a different BI reporting? Why do I need a different warehouse or data warehouse? There are a lot of opportunities inside the Microsoft stack, and I think that's what a lot of our customers, right, would like to have a partner that can guide them through all those needs. So right now, I can tell you there is a lot out there in Power Platform, Power Automate, Synapse Analytics, OCR, warehouse management, demand-driven material planning. So all these little components, little by little, enhancing those to your current implementation is what can increase and ramp up your return of investment from the materials point of view, also from the human capital point of view, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm a more valuable resource when I spend my time making analysis and actually proposing improvements rather than be typing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the return on investment on
Mm-hmm.
capital side looks like. It's not about reducing the number of the people on the team. It's about enhancing them to use their time to make analysis and look for better ways to do the things, right? So that's basically what all these little type of options will help you with after your implementation.
Well, you're singing my song. You know, there's the old saying that says "do more with less," and frankly, I'm not a big fan of that phrase. I like to say "do more with the same," because I've been in facilities where you say more with less, and people might actually fear for their jobs, right?
Exactly.
But if you do more with the same people and the same resources that you have, now you can do a whole lot more functionality and workflows that you may have never even dreamed exist, and ways to deliver increased value to your customer, your stakeholders, and to your employees. And that's really what it's about, is to find new ways. And I think that's the beauty. You can do that in the SMB level, but the enterprise, there are so many more opportunities to do things that might seem out of reach. And what are some of the things that are kind of really future looking or almost futuristic from your perspective in 2023 that they could look to in their roadmap down the line?
Yeah, definitely. I would suggest, to be honest, to every single customer that it's on top of the 365 right now, right? And they do have commercial and production type of operations. Take a look at Microsoft Supply Chain Center, right? It's impressive what actually AI is working with your data, right? So the fact that you have vendors and you can see news of what it's affecting those vendors, that's an insight for you. If a vendor has an outage of something, or if somebody is kind of putting a news out there, Supply Center can help you to know what is going on with your vendors, with your customers, right? So that it's a huge advantage. So a way to feel or to see how you're doing on your on-time fulfillment, inventory turnovers, right? I don't know, supply coverage. So the fact that you can have that information at the top of your screen, right, with just a couple of clicks, that is great. So Supply Chain Center, I will say it's the way to go in the next year, right, or during this year. Once you are on top of the 365, it's great insights, right? So it's everything that you can need in order to make decisions. That's basically where your focus should be. How do I use all that data to take accurate decisions? It's not just about streamline processes, right? That's done. We're done after our implementation. Let's take it to the next level. So Supply Chain Center is where I would like to recommend a lot of companies to go and take a look at.
Fantastic. That's love it. Love it. So, Mr. Ben, so coming from we're talking primarily about the out-of-the-box experience, and for a Business Central, it's tailored toward SMB. It's not that it's pared down. It's just, why pay for all this extra that a small business may or may not use, okay? And so that's where, while there are add-ons across the board for Dynamics 365 platforms, the add-ons really shine in the SMB space. So how do those add-ons really contribute to the ROI with D365, regardless of which platform?
Yeah, definitely. I think the easiest way I like to look at it, right, is it's so scalable, right? And they do start it out with kind of that, I'll call it the base model, right? It's kind of like going to the dealership and shopping for the car. You can get the car with the small rims and the V4 and the cloth seats, or you can add some more money in, kind of a la carte, right? You can get the Bose speakers, you can get the leather seats or the sunroof. So you can kind of add one or the other, but you don't have to add it all in at the same time, right? It's kind of more of a customizable solution, I'll call it, but I don't like to use the word customizable. Maybe configurable is a better word, because there's no development customization, right? You're kind of picking and choosing what you want to plug and play based on what drives your ROI, right? So the tool set isn't a one size fits all, which I think is the really nice thing about Business Central. And you can start with literally one user for $70 a month. And I like to say, skip the QuickBooks phase, right? Just go to Business Central, do $70 a month. You know, you're not going to be spending a ton more money than you were on QuickBooks, and you avoid having to do maybe a $100,000 to $200,000 implementation in the future, because you can scale up and then add those tools in over time. You need AR automation, great, we can add a tool in for that. You need some dashboards and reports, great, we can add that in. You need enhanced manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, shipping, whatever it might be. I don't know what the count of tools is out there. There's so many pages that it just goes out to ... and I never get that far of clicking, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of measuring the ROI and the time to value on those things, it really depends on the company, right? So I think the biggest thing there with all of the noise is working with a partner who knows what they're doing. Typically, they're the ones vetting we call it the ISV solutions, right? The third-party solutions, and really being an advisor rather than just a consultant to recommend, hey, you have, 1 million invoices you're sending out to your customers. We can't be printing those. We need to be emailing those, and we can't be emailing them one by one. We need to batch email them all out at one time. Business Central does a great job. I like to use this as an example of sending emails out kind of one by one. But as soon as you get past that and you have a ton of them, you need to automate it, right? And those are things that you can truly measure based on who's inputting the data and how fast we can reduce that, because it doesn't add any value to that person's long-term career to just click the same button over and over again, right? Like Javier said, you want to reallocate their time to do something that's driving value to the business. So when I always look at it, not only am I looking at ROI and time to value, but overall, how does it impact kind of the decisions that you're trying to get to, right? If you have more time back from manual processes, you have more time to think critically and analytically as to how we can make this business better as a whole, how we can get money in the door faster, how we can reduce our bills outgoing. And I think something Chris and Javier both talked about kind of goes into, I kind of put it in a trifecta. It's the people, the processes, and the technology. So if you have good people and good processes but bad technology, you can't scale, right? If you have good technology and good processes but bad people, nobody's going to follow the rules, right? So you have to have all three of these things kind of working in tandem, but when they all work in tandem very well, you can scale exponentially and then start to add some of these things in and really start to measure, right? Because like Chris said, I want to drill down, I want to drill down again, I want to drill down again. I don't want to have to click on 5 different screens to know where I'm going. I want it to be streamlined, and I want to report and use that information in order to make decisions. I don't want to look at it just because it's pretty, right? I want to use it to actually do something. If you're not actioning items off of those reports and dashboards and whatever they are, to me they're useless, right? If you're not doing anything, what are they worth, right? So I think that's my 2 cents in how you can really drive and kind of monetize what the ROI or the time to value is, right? If you don't have a number you're tracking to, it's hard to kind of track those statistics.
So I think you might have the takeaway quote probably of the entire session, and we've really just gotten started, and that is skip the QuickBooks phase. I mean, honestly, if you think about it, they're nowadays they're both in the cloud. They both have a pretty significant learning curve, for an entrepreneur. Okay, if you're an accountant or a bookkeeper or a CFO and you come from QuickBooks, okay, so you skip that learning curve for this organization, but it's still a pretty stiff thing. And what kind of differences are there? I mean, what are the limitations? If they skip the QuickBooks phase, or what are the possibilities, not the limitations, just the opposite.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of limitations, I don't see any, because you can do everything QuickBooks can do in Business Central, right? So it's just,
and more.
Tons more. I think the reason is because, I've never seen a Business Central commercial while watching ESPN, right? But you see QuickBooks commercials and Workday commercials and all this other stuff all the time. So it's just, hey, I'm going to file my LLC. What's the next step? All these, companies that after you file your LLC, it probably says, okay, go QuickBooks, because they got a bunch of marketing materials and marketing money, right? So I think it's just because that's what people think is the right step, and they associate QuickBooks with small business. But what they don't realize is they're going to get $100,000 plus price tag when they go to implement something new. And honestly, a lot of the QuickBooks implementations I see, that phase 1, which might be $100,000, 6 figures somewhere, all they're doing is redoing QuickBooks in Business Central, because then they can scale after, right? So it's like it's a necessary evil to get on, because they've topped out what QuickBooks can do, and now they want to go to the moon with Business Central, but there's no way to get from point A to point B without spending the money to convert. So that's why I say just skip the whole thing. And I've got a lot of use cases of clients that I've convinced to do that, and they've been very successful with Business Central. They have to learn something no matter what. And I think, maybe the QuickBooks materials they got, more animated videos or something like that. I'm not sure, but people seem to just run with it. But that's not always a good thing, because they're usually doing things not optimized or not even compliant sometimes, right?
Yeah. Well, you kind of teed up the next portion here that I want to go into, and it's related to reducing risk. And I mean, that's in an enterprise organization, the risk is extraordinarily costly if when you run into issues. For an SMB, it's not costly in terms of dollars, but the setbacks can be devastating. So, I mean, going into that, Chris, we were talking about going into or from QuickBooks, just in context of that, but of course it doesn't have to be that. It could be migrating from some other small business system. I mean, what are the risks if someone decides to take that leap and invest in that? What are the risks of going it alone? Because sadly, some of them try, or a number of them try.
Yeah, and even the QuickBooks comment, Ben, you know why they go to QuickBooks? Because they don't have to know accounting to use QuickBooks. I'm sorry, but we've been saying this for 30 years.
Right.
QuickBooks, you don't have to be an accountant. We show up at the QuickBooks companies, they're going to Business Central. We're like, where's the accountant? And they're like, not in this room.
Right.
So that is a big difference, and I think that is just to differentiate for people listening. And QuickBooks, yeah, it's an easy path, but it's not the right path, and I think that's where the arduous journey is in shifting into a correct platform that has accounting and has controls where you can't go delete an invoice and have all your reports change for 3 years, and that's the QuickBooks scenario. So, but you talk about risks, and I think as you look at the risks of, we speak about going it alone, and so there's a going it alone, and what that effectively means is you're self-implementing. I think that's the term, correct? That's what self-implementing. And what that means, you're like, I can do this. I don't need anybody else. You guys ever take your gallbladder out by yourself in your back room? It's not a big deal. I've only got 3 holes in my stomach. How hard can that be? Anyway, but it is. The self-implementing is you don't have a guided tour. You don't have an experienced individual that's going to point out all the pitfalls or all the weaknesses. But I think that there are some companies that say, I'm going to go hire somebody and bring them in. And I can tell horror stories about that. And you're like, well, where is the problem? It's leadership, okay? There's, when I, in my company, not just me, but when I did it, and when Javier does it, when everybody's, we lead. We don't say, what do you need? You're like, well, what do I need? Well, I don't know. What do you need? It's not the circular. It's like, let me tell you what you need and how we're going to accomplish that. Thank you. That's what I needed. I needed somebody to show up and make a decision that's accurate, not zigzagging, right? Hey, I'm going to drive, and I'm going to head west, and I'll stop and ask for directions after I go 1,000 miles, and I got to go this way, and I'm going to go this way. So, there's another example, and that speaks to inefficiency, right? Math degree, shortest distance between 2 points is effectively a straight line. Even a circle's a bunch of little straight lines, if you didn't know that, folks. But it is the shortest distance, and it is the most efficient path. And so, so do you ask for direction sooner? Do you get guidance? And I think that's it. So that risk, it's cost, turnover. You're going to make people mad in your company, and they're going to quit. And you're going to have disruption in your organization that you haven't had. I got a horror story, and I'm not going to name names. I had somebody show up yesterday. They've been trying to implement finance and operations for 3 years by themselves. 3 years. Okay, guess what? They've spent a lot of money. And, one of the things is companies don't keep track of indirect cost very accurately. What's indirect cost? That means I went over there and talked to you for an hour, and I went back over here. That hour cost money. Nobody tracks that. So if you think about bleeding off talent and emotion and things over 3 years, there's an enormous cost that nobody's measuring. Okay, so going back to guidance, going back to getting a partner organization, somebody that's got experience, that understands your business, that understands the solution, and again, they're going to proactively, not reactively guide you. At least that's what you expect when you get the right resource, the right partner organization, is a much more direct, straight line path to the implementation, more efficient, calling out the obstacles, and even helping you make those decisions that you don't know how to make. So, you ask about indecision. I need scope creep. All right, we can do that. Well, Susie wants that report. Put it in. We got it. We've been working on this for years. We'll keep going. That's not the right way. It's, hey, guys, let's have discipline. Let's have control. Parking lot, what's that mean? We need it, but it's over here. It's in phase 2. So even the discipline on managing scope takes professionals. It just doesn't happen because people meander. And again, I can continue there, but there are risks. And I think in the end of the day, costs, unmeasured costs, personnel costs, business disruption cost. When we manage go lives, my customers expect me to manage downtime. They don't expect, hey, we're down for a month. We only lost $10 million going live. So now we go back to the cost of the project. Licensing, partner costs, lost revenue, lost employees, lost resources. So again, you've heard a number of different aspects there that you can't have business disruption, you can't lose personnel, you got to keep morale going, and again, you've got to achieve the results, and you've got to have the disciplines to march through in phases. Anyway.
And well, I mean, you talk about the opportunity cost, and I think that and you also talk about honestly spreading it out. We've already mentioned here that these can be six-figure projects even for a small business, but people think of it as this one great big project. But really, if you think of it in terms of capital spending in a budget year, okay, if we're able to spread that over X number of years and apply it incrementally, a professional consultant organization can really help them to plan that in an effective way that not only doesn't interrupt their processes, but also works within their capital budget. There are certain things you're going to need to do up front, period, right, to get up and running, but you don't need to do everything. So on the flip side, what are some of, in your opinion, because you understand the businesses, that's the part of it. It's not just understanding the software, it's understanding the business processes and being that analyst. What are the potential consequences of indecision? Because we've seen so many people say, yeah, I want to do this, and they kick the can down the road.
Well, and you mentioned opportunity costs. So, and again, people don't measure and do their math very well. Just like I said, they don't keep track of the labor costs that just floated away. Someone sitting there not working floats away. But, think about, I didn't get the system in 2022. And you know what? I didn't have the opportunity to close 4 new contracts worth $5 million. I didn't grow the business because I didn't change the system. I didn't get the contracts. So, and again, nobody measured that. We're still a $10 million company, and it could have been 12. Could have made an extra 600,000. But I think that's the opportunity cost. Is we had a customer that came to us because he could not add new customers. He was a legacy EDI, and his technology was killing him. He had a guy that wanted to buy $50 million worth of stuff. Couldn't sign him up because my systems won't let me add you. There's a perfect example of waiting. Again, there's an opportunity. Chance favors those that are prepared. And I think as you inspect your legacy technology, you know that you've got to deal with it. And if you procrastinate, and to that point, you kick the can down the road, you're not measuring the cost of that delay. But just as you've heard me say, there are some consequential ones. And God forbid you have a hack or a downtime event and nobody can fix it or bring it back. I've had people say, hey, your system crashed. Can you bring it back up? No, it's dead. It can't be dead. It's dead. And so when you hear these end-of-life warnings, you're like, it's still running. My server, 2008 Windows is going to keep running. There is a point where you can't resuscitate systems. So just keep that in mind. There are people that have catastrophic system losses. And then how do you run the business? And that's a great forethought. Is think about how you run the business if you pull everything out of the wall and it's all unplugged. And there's your scenario if you wait too long, because we have people right now that are told you've got to move. And what is really going to happen? They think, is it really going to stop running? Anyway.
So, wow, you just teed up my question for Javier. Javier, can you take that and expand on it? I'd really like to understand. I mean, kind of lay it out for us. What are the different things in the scenario? What happens with the outdated systems? You're on mute.
I think outdated systems is probably one of the most critical things a customer needs to take care of, right? So it's like dealing with outdated systems is going to take you to less compliance with new requirements on the industry, right? That won't help you to sign new customers. I think that's one great impact. The other thing is it won't allow you to keep growing your return of investment. That's another thing, and your users are not going to be happier than they are, right? Those are kind of the things, and this will take us to rotation and on the companies, right? And rotation takes you to investment of new people learning the system again. So at the end of the day, you reduce your return of investment. So the risk to be outdated, it's huge, right? And at the end of the day, every single customer that is on top of Dynamics on an enterprise level, I'm pretty sure they experience it with these updates that Microsoft is doing, right? Microsoft is on top of the one version for all my customers, and when Microsoft is updating every 3 months the platforms and the ERPs, right, in a specific Dynamics 365. So how do we reduce this? Because it's huge risk. We need to have either a partner, right, that it's helping us by doing regression suite automation testings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you need to have an internal team that it's actually using the RSAT, that it's putting all your business processes together, that it's taking the time to actually ensure that the next version is not going to affect you because you want to be updated, right? But at the same time, is you want to make sure that all those updates are not going to be disruptive with what you have. So
Mm-hmm.
either you have a great IT team that can take care of that, right? Or you have a great partner that can help you to advise you, hey, this is coming, right? We will make sure that you won't suffer anything, right? And that you will have only the good stuff about it, right? You don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be losing that because being outdated can kill a customer, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, you're not growing. You're steady, right? You're not growing. You stop being compliant. You stop having new features, right? You cannot grow your business. So there's no win on being outdated, right? So I think it's what Chris stated is you need to you cannot do it a lot of times just by yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a partner that can guide you through, and definitely at the end of the day, at an enterprise level, I would say that with Microsoft Dynamics the risk get reduced because at the end of the day there are automated tools out there doing the things for you. You need somebody to manage those tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can reduce the risk. How much are you willing to invest on those updates, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and that's where it comes. Either you have an IT department or you have a partner that can hold you and can guide you through all the time. So I think that's what I can see about and say about
Mm-hmm.
outdated systems right now and
Okay.
the risk that it represents.
Well, Ben, building on Javier's thoughts about the automation for the companies, switching to creating new tools with automation and new analytics and workflows and that sort of thing that can be kind of scary. And one of the things when the whole reason for the fear or being just a little nervous about it is because of perceived risk. What if something goes wrong? And what are some of those things that could go wrong? Are there any?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to look at when you're unpacking something like that, right? So what I like to do just from a process standpoint as you get into it, right? I talked about before how there's just an unlimited amount of apps, it seems, in the app
Mm-hmm.
source, right? So you have to have the kind of like base core system in place before I even really start talking about what
Mm-hmm.
tools we're going to pick, right? So there's a lot out there, but until we know, I mean, things like your chart of accounts, your dimensions, your customers and vendors, how things are going to be flowing through the system, it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to pick out what tools I'm going to recommend. Even we have a lot of tools where sometimes, they're not the right fit for certain clients, and I'll be the first person to tell them that, right? I think it's a good fit for a lot of people, but you really have to evaluate what they're doing first. And I think one of the biggest risks associated with any of this, especially automation, is if you don't understand your own process and you just automate it, kind of going back to that people process
Mm-hmm.
technology thing. If you have really good people, or if you have really good technology but bad people and processes, you might have just automated something that's bad, right? You
Mm-hmm.
might be sending emails and notifications and workflows that are just garbage, right? And worst of all, they could be customer facing, right? You'd hate to have a bad spam email go out because you said, "Hey, I'm sending too many emails. I'm just going to automate that," and then you're just
Mm-hmm.
sending your customers or vendors or whoever it is just a bunch of baloney, right? So I think
Mm-hmm.
kind of understanding the manual process. It seems backwards and kind of weird sometimes when you're talking about automation, but understanding the manual process is actually key to automating it to make sure it works perfectly. If I were to click the buttons and go through it manually and then say, aha, yes, that's exactly how I want it to work. Now let's
Mm-hmm.
automate it so I never have to see it again,
Mm-hmm.
right? And taking it from that approach, I think, really looks into some of the things that a lot of people are looking at when coming from old systems to new systems as well. Just going off of one of the things Chris and Javier said, not only are you looking at compliance issues and turnover issues, but the cost associated with staying on some of these tools, right? I called a guy, I want to say it was like 2 weeks ago, to troubleshoot a problem from a system I've never used on premise that I've never even logged into, and they're charging like $400 an hour, right? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what's my other option? I don't have one because it needs to get fixed, right? So I think,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, for people who stay on systems, people are going to switch to consultants are going to switch to more enterprise systems or more cloud-based systems, and the consulting base that knows these legacy products is slowly going to dwindle and disappear. And basic supply and demand, it's going to get really expensive. So the longer you stay, sure, you might save some money in the short term, but long term, I mean, the guy I called last week could be charging $1,000 2 years from now because he's the only one left doing it, right?
Yep.
And why wouldn't he? I mean, again, supply and demand. So I think those are some of the hidden risks as well that people don't realize of staying. Is not only could the system die, like Chris said, but it could get ridiculously expensive where you go to a new tool like Business Central or F&O or something, and you're paying per user. Microsoft's kind of maintaining it in the cloud, and you've got the backups, and you don't have to have an IT person in the office maintaining it for you because it's all part of your service level agreement or anything else that you've got with Microsoft. So I think those are some of the key things that I look at when looking at kind of the risks associated with staying, as well as the risk associated with moving, right? Automating things before you're actually ready. I think that is a big risk when you do automate.
Well, speaking as an industrial engineer myself, the whole concept of applying a great big expensive calculator on top of your existing workflows and not taking the opportunity to erase the whiteboard and say, maybe I can learn something in this process. Well, frankly, I think it's foolhardy. It's that change is evil mindset. This always worked for us. Well, you're forgetting about the opportunities to make improvements. I mean, truly, things you don't understand. As Chris mentioned about, that's why you work with a consultant, so that you can have someone who understands what the current best practices are. Because believe it or not, best practices change over time as new tools, come into the play, as new concepts are learned, new mathematics, and all kinds of different things. So how do you suggest people then, Ben, mitigate those risks in terms of budget and timeline?
So I think going back to one of the things you said earlier, right? It's not one big project all at once, right? You're kind of improving things day by day. And this is what I tell a lot of people, right? If you can make your system just 1% better every single day, it compounds on top of each other, just kind of like investing your money in the S&P 500, right? You put $1,000 in now, you get 7 or 8% every year for the next 30 years. It's going to continuously grow and compound on top of each other. If you treat an ERP implementation in an ongoing effort that way, right? After you go live, that's just a milestone on a calendar, right? Tomorrow you should be looking at, okay, well, how can I get better? How can I get better? And if you continuously do that and take that approach, which some people will, some people won't, I think that's how you mitigate a lot of the risks associated with timeline and budget, because then you don't feel like you have to just throw it over the fence and pay somebody a bunch of money to get it all done by August 1st, just because that's when my boss said we had to go live, right? Get the key things in place, get the framework, get the foundation in place so that you can pay bills and you can accept money and you can do some agings and run some reports, right? And then add on some enhanced reporting, add on some automation tools, add on whatever it is that's going to make your people focus on being creative and really automating and driving value rather than just clicking buttons and doing manual processes, right? So again, that kind of all comes back to having the right mindset and working with the right partner. I think there's plenty of different styles out there, but if you constantly look for improvement, I think that's what makes these types of projects really successful, because the budgets and timelines on a lot of the ISV products that I work on, they're minimal compared to the whole project, right? So you want to add in AP or AR automation. Okay, well, the project might take you 500-600 hours. This little piece might take 20 or 40, right? So it's, in my opinion, it's a lot less risky, but done wrong, anything obviously provides opportunities to have a lot of risk. So it's doing it the right way, following the rules, and really asking the why behind things and evaluating that before just saying, yeah, let's automate everything and get rid of everybody, right? Because that's not the answer.
Right, exactly.
Do more with the same people, kind of like you said.
Let's hope.
Hopefully.
Honestly. Yeah. Well, stepping from there, Chris, let's talk about, the Dynamics 365 ecosphere. It's a big ecosphere. And I think that's really one of the greatest selling points of Dynamics 365 platforms, is that you have that crossover from, amongst all the Microsoft products, but they're really taking this to the next step. And what are some of the opportunities for innovation that are available just in the short term with just Dynamics 365 within the ecosphere?
AI, everybody says artificial intelligence. So what's that mean? Well, again, we're going to get rid of people, Ben. I'm sorry, but that's the whole goal here is less bodies. That's okay. I'm an owner, right? I have to have that attitude. But honestly, as you look at automation, we talk about how much of this stuff can they automate, and remote process automation doesn't necessarily mean AI. Well, it could just be a bunch of embedded logic that's going through decision making, and it feels like AI. But when we start adding AI, AI learns on its own. You feed it and it's, ooh, I know what to do more. And so a little different. So if you think about, again, the remote process automation, cash application, there's an algorithm. Match on the bank account, the customer, the invoice, that, can't find that, do that, next transaction. But API, AI, so what are we talking about AI? Well, AI is reading. And so Javier used a great example of AI where now it's out there sniffing around your vendor customer profiles to kind of give you, hey, this guy's got problems and he's not telling you. That's interesting. That's AI. But in sales, you have insights in marketing, insights where it start analyzing customer and trying to give you some indications. I've got one. It's kind of an AI app, but we're building to find all the missing bank transactions that are in my ERP. That's an interesting one. Ben's like, I want that one, but it is. You're aggregating bank data and you're writing algorithms to do that. It's kind of AI-ish. But OCR is a great example of AI because you teach it. It learns every vendor invoice. New vendor, let me learn it. We've got another application we're looking at where people are coding brokerage statements to make those bookings. Arduous process. A lot of those brokerage companies don't have electronics. Well, back to AI, we can teach it to read a brokerage statement and parse that data and put it in the system. So again, AI around integration, whether that's AP automation, banking integration, cash coming in, other forms of data that, in the past were difficult for us to take them and automate them and parse them and so forth. So learning management's another one. That's another one I'm going to mention. I didn't mention it earlier on, but I think as you think about sustainability and ROI, learning management's come a long way. And for everything that Javier mentioned, you got to have a learning management platform to really ensure your ROI on those people. And so those are a couple of comments I'll make there. But those are low-hanging fruit. Like I said, there's toys and things in play right now that you can go get. So,
well, one of the things that I love about the ecosphere is, the native integration with the Microsoft, with the Microsoft 365 products, the stuff that so many, if not almost all companies are using nowadays. And there's also a lot of buzz around Power Platform, Chris. That's not. It feels like it's advanced, but it's not quite as advanced. Can you go a little deeper into that for folks?
Extensibility, and I think you go back to that, is how easily can I extend my app? And low code, meaning, developers. Do I need to be a comp sci guy to do this stuff? Not anymore. So now the low code innovation, we used a great example today where we're trying to push out Business Central into 50 or so clinical locations. And they said, well, they already use a clinical system. How do we order? We said, well, I give you a Power App. It's like, build me a requisition. Click, 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 point at stuff, scan it, scan it, scan it. Oh, here's a requisition to buy more. That's a Power App that's extension of Business Central to drive a requisition to create a PO so the centralized company gets this inventory in, but it's a low impact to the users in the field. And so part of that as well is I can't say here's a Business Central screen, key in a purchase order. Well, that's a tough user experience, but this is a great example of how we can innovate with a Power App, create a simple app. And the other one is I think there was a consumable that they wanted to capture. Like, hey, when I put this piece in your body, can I scan the barcode on your forehead and record whatever part I put in you? And so now we have a record of things we're putting inside of people too, which again, if they're all manual processes, simple examples how to take this. And so Power Apps, Power Platform, Power Automate, Power BI, everybody's heard about Power BI, Power Pages. We got a lot of power out there in Microsoft. And each of these capabilities has a companion. And everybody's like, well, what's a companion? It's an AI companion. And what that means is it helps you. I watched a demonstration where the companion wrote about 99% of the code that the person needed. So these companion apps are doing stuff for you, but they're AI driven as well. So you mentioned Power Platform. It is huge. Again, I didn't want to take all the thunder, but that's a great one to mention.
That's all right. It just makes me laugh. 15 years ago, putting something in you would have sounded creepy. Now I venture to say there's almost no one who's watching this today that doesn't know somebody who's had a hip implant, knee implant, shoulder implant, and pacemaker or something. And it's just kind of every day. But all that stuff needs to be tracked. And it needs to be tracked and very closely. Heck, they're making movies and TV shows about that stuff. So Javier, this is all very overwhelming to me, honestly. There's so many things just that we've discussed here and so many more when you get into details. How do you suggest that people prioritize
Yeah,
all the
definitely. I think
possibilities?
that's kind of the main challenge is that once you're done with your implementation, right, and once you're on top of the 365, is how do you prioritize your next steps, your big wins, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
let's say high impact, low effort stuff, right? So it's at the end of the day, I will say first thing we need to take a look at our goals as a company, as a department, right? Is the goals will drive those those uh, those big wins, right? So I would like to talk about. So we need to say which ones are my goals. What are the steps to get into each one of those, right? And what's the technology that it's around it? So how many people do I need? Can I do it internally? Do I need a partner? Right? How long is it going to take? So all these things need to come through the Blender evaluation. Usually I would like to say that the high impact, low effort type of task should take less than 3 months. Should be something that it's in between from 1 to 3 months to actually get done, right? And at the end of the day, I will say that a way to prioritize is how much business will I gain by doing that, right? How easier the things are going to be for my users, for the people that it's working on my company if I do this. Right? Those are kind of the things that we need to put on the blender. And thankfully, there's a lot of about technology. There's not a lot of roadblocks, right? So right now, as we were stating, is AI. Something that we didn't talk about is IoT, right? It's the
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
simple thing as it's not AI because it's not learning, but Internet of Things. That's huge, right? How can, let's say we have a situation right now where our customer they have several type of materials that they are weighted, right? They are managed by
Mm-hmm.
weight, right? And they have them on a rack. Why that rack doesn't have a way to send information to my ERP, and I can
Mm-hmm.
avoid to have inventory countings, right? So I can avoid to have a people going into a scale and have information and drop. So
Mm-hmm.
how can I make the sensors of a CNC machine to start the timing on my route, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I hit a button, the machine starts running, and that is recorded on a PLC, right? That information is on a PLC that can be connected to your ERP, right? Are you going to do it straightforward? No, of course not, but you need to use Azure connectors, right? You need to start uploading the data to a blob storage. You need to start obtaining or grabbing that information by using Power Platform, because there are several integration points that Power Platform is doing. So at the end of the day, it's not all about learning, but it's also integrating machines. It's also integrating devices to record information into your ERP. That's what IoT is. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
part that a lot of companies should look into if they want to increase their ROI. Because honestly, that's less typing, that's accurate information, right?
Mm-hmm.
That could be synchronized information or batch information, whatever the decision it is, right? But those are the things that are open there to the market. At the end of the day, um, let's try to focus on your goals, define what can be done in the first 3 months or in between 3 months, right? And worry a little bit less about how will you do it, because the technology right now it's open there, right? You have several different ways within Microsoft, which is an advantage. You do not need to rely on 4 or 5 different teams. It's basically your team and a Microsoft partner that can
Mm-hmm.
help you with. And
Mm-hmm.
reducing the number of players while you are doing an implementation, right? It's something that will guarantee that you will get there faster, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not the same to have communication between the customer and the partner than have the customer and 6 partners, because you are involving 6 different technologies to get to one common goal. So
Mm-hmm.
let's take leverage of everything that Microsoft is building internally and also with the ISVs, right? Because they are integrating straightforward. So we are reducing risk there to have all these high impact, low effort kind of goals. And
Mm-hmm.
again, is prioritize them, starting on the time that you will take to do it, right? And how much money is that going to bring to the table? directly or indirectly, right? Because the fact that I have a guy not typing something into a route or pushing buttons in a computer, that's gain, that's money, right? So we need to make sure that the customers know how to measure these indirect rates, right? So that will also give them that visibility. So I will say that that's put everything on the matrix, right? Define what's going to take you 0 to 3 months, what you can do internally, and what you need help with from your partner. Technology, it's not a roadblocker. There's a lot of options out there. So that could be a suggestion for those customers who are looking for that.
Well, and again, I still think that there's this air of this is all a lot, and it's intimidating. So, I mean, how does a partner like yourself help folks to identify those high impact, low effort opportunities and kind of lead them there?
Exactly. Let's take a big breath at the very beginning, right? It's like, okay, so let's focus, right? So I'm gonna take a deep breath and hey, this is what I want. Good. Don't be scared, right? Don't be scared to do an analysis. Don't be scared to throw ideas into the table, right? That's the worst thing we can do, because the fear is not gonna take us anywhere, right? So the fear is just that sentiment that we need to avoid, right? Because at the end of the day, the things right now you can do whatever you want, right? So the technology, ERP speaking, technology speaking, I mean, there's no limitations by now at all. And with Microsoft, there are less limitations than with any other kind of platform.
Well, and it's an amazing time to be in a situation and be in a millennium where we can say you can do whatever you want.
Innovate.
Honestly,
Yeah,
and we might have said that 40 years ago, but it has such a different meaning nowadays. When I think about IoT, it's kind of when you're a geek like me and you're paying attention to all the different technologies and how they're rolling in and the different possibilities, it's a really exciting time. But again, it can be overwhelming, so we got to nail it down, Ben. In terms of the automation and the add-ons, the new technologies, we got to take this piecemeal again. What are the no-brainers that they should be hitting early in terms of add-ons and automations?
Yeah, from a very generic view, I like what Javier said, right? The high impact, low effort, right? Put a list together, knock all those out first, because you're going to be able to do them as quick as possible, and they're not going to cost you a lot, whether that's costs in time or costs in money, right? And when I look at it, you need cash to invest and do other things, right? So when I automate, I think people always are looking at like AP automation first. I look at AR automation first, right? How can we get our invoices out to our customers faster? How can we remind them that their payments are due? And how can we link it and put a link in their invoice to say, here, just click here and give us your money, right? Any of those things missing increase the barriers to getting that customer to pay. The harder it is for them to pay, the longer it's going to take for you to get that money in your bank account, right? So investing in things that make it easy to have your customers pay you, I think is, in my opinion, the first thing that I focus on. Then I start to focus on tools that can help predict and analyze cash flow, right? We can do some basic things from a cash flowing perspective, but like Chris said, you can start to plug in some AI tools, and then it goes beyond just what's my customer's payment terms. Great, their payment terms are 30, but they never pay me until 60. So 30 is really useless in my opinion, right? You plug in an AI tool and it says, well, yeah, sure, it's 30, but they're really usually paying you 50 or 55 days past that invoice date, right? So then starting to use some of those tools, loop them in with an AR automation tool, loop them in with a cash flow automation to really start predicting, okay, do I have a surplus of cash and can I reinvest it? And then you look at automating some of the things that save time, like, AP automation. I mean, you're just paying bills, right? So if that's a little bit slower to start, your vendors might not be happy, but from a company perspective, you don't care, right? I mean, it's good. Then you have some more cash flow. So I would actually implement that after all these AR automation tools. And I think one of the other things that was kind of mentioned casually, but we didn't really focus on, is we're talking about saving a lot of time, but all these things we're talking about also help reduce mistakes. And if we reduce mistakes, we don't have to go over it twice. It's always cheaper to do it right the first time than it is to go in back and redo it, right? So in looking at some of these tools as well that we're kind of tagging on, it's not just saving time from kind of that perspective of the one time, but also looking at, Can we reduce mistakes? How many mistakes are we making that we have to go revisit? Did we, like Javier said, if we're doing inventory count manually instead of using IoT to do it for us automatically, what if I counted 12 instead of 13? Okay, and then you go back and somebody counts 13, and then they, like Chris said earlier, they start arguing about it for an hour, and that's just an hour wasted on both of their ends, right? So it's all of these things that people don't look at that compound behind the scenes, where if it's a well-oiled machine and it's running, you reduce the risk, you reduce all of the kind of manual work that's happening, you reduce the mistakes, and you can start to focus on growing your business. So, I mean, I've got a lot of tools that do all of these things. I don't want to give my own commercial, but if anybody needs help in the Business Central world, we've got tools in AR, AP automation. We've got a lot of other ISVs that we work with as well who either tack onto ours or do it differently. So I think, that's the cool thing about the Business Central space, in my opinion. There's a lot of good tools out there, and some that would traditionally people think be competitors. We work directly with them because they do something a little bit different in a different way that might work better for certain customers. So a lot of opportunities out there. I think, again, tackle those low-hanging fruits, those high-impact, low efforts, and start with AR would be my opinion after you get kind of the base system set up. Really automate getting paid and use that cash to reinvest in other things.
Cool. Yeah, well, don't sweat the commercial, Ben. One of the reasons you're here is because we like you. So
Okay,
don't sweat it. All right, gents. Let's go around the robin here for some closing thoughts. Chris, what have you got for them?
So the big mistakes, invest in a project manager on
close. Yeah. Oh, there you go. I love it.
What were you saying?
You love it. Just closing thoughts. Invest in a project manager. Run with it.
Invest in a project manager on your side. The partner will have their own project manager, but get your own. Someone that really knows what they're doing, that can drive your organization. Don't overcomplicate your project. Don't be over ambitious and add too much scope. Succeed, push, okay? So be realistic. That's it.
Cool. Javier, what are your closing thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think at the end of the day, my closing thoughts is as an enterprise level of company is, let's just make sure after you implement Dynamics or you are after you have three months, don't be afraid to innovate. If you are in the middle of your implementation, dream big, as you used to say, Chuck. Put the things on the table. Don't be afraid. Right, the technology is actually out there for every single one of us to use. So take leverage of that. Okay, so and make sure that all the time you have a good partner on your side, right? A partner, not just a vendor, but a partner that will help your business grow and succeed. So that's it.
Thank you. Ben?
I'd say analyze your manual process and make sure that's perfect before you automate it, and then just get 1% better every day and keep compounding on that.
Okay. All good advice. Well, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. Very grateful for all of your insight and everything you shared today. And folks, if this concludes what we're trying to get out there today, if you want to get in touch with us, if you have any questions, reach out to us. We'll make sure that we get those answered pronto, because this is really just an opportunity to create more thinking on the topic. We clearly can't solve all the problems here in this 1 hour, but we really want to create food for thought so you can say, hey, this is possible for me, or it helps me to think of something that I hadn't thought of before. Think about it in a new way. And really, because it's about creating possibilities for your business. So as Javier reminded me, thanks for your time. Dream big, act small, and differentiate continuously. And a good partner will help get you there. Thanks.